Roundstone's been in business about 28 years. We started out here as beef cattle and tobacco farmers. My father's a self-taught botanist, so everything about his life has been based on the love for wildlife. He saw what we had, taught me about it. We talked about the need for native grasses, wildflowers, and wetland plants in our environment. We decided that we were going to try something. We got 5-gallon buckets and we set our watches, and for 1 hour we picked seed to see how much we could pick. And then we went home that night and we did some numbers and we talked about what the need was and why we would do it to see if it was effective and if it was worthwhile. We now raise a little over 2,000 acres of native grasses, wildflowers, wetland plants, a little over 200 species in total, in all different purposes, from wildlife habitat to stream bank mitigation and restoration. So all different types of uses for the types of plants that we grow.
All right, this is one of Roundstone Native Seed's production fields here. So we grow all of our species currently in monoculture, so that way we can make you a custom mix specifically for your goals. So some landowners have a goal specifically for a certain type of wildlife, but mainly when you're looking at here, what we're trying to do is, you can see how thick it is, and you can see how some of it's laid over and creating a huge thatch layer. And typically in this situation, this is where you're going to be wanting to try to do some burn. So we burn production fields every year, but from a wildlife habitat standpoint, you're probably going to be burning those on a 3 to 5 year rotation, but it's going to depend on the environment and the land conditions that you're dealing with. With this stand here, it's no longer good for things like quail and things that are small, especially early on. You know, when the quail hatch, they're the size of a little bumblebee. They can't move through this. That's the same problem that a fescue field also has, and creating no bare ground. And like things like quail need a lot of bare ground. So with production burns, we try to burn late spring. So we actually want to allow for a lot of the cool season weeds to germinate. And so that way we can actually use it to thin those weeds back and promote the native warm season grass growth, and allows us to be able to get a cleaner field just with the use of fire there. We can look out over in here. You'll see a lot more diversity in there. There's a mosaic of different types of vegetation. So there's a combination of grasses and wildflowers, and there's also an amount of bare ground. And that is actually what is creating that wildlife habitat. So with native grasses, you have a lot of use by animals, especially like ground nesting birds. And for a lot of the animals, things like turkeys, for the first 2 weeks of their life, the majority of their diet is actually insects. So by attracting the insects to this area with the use of wildflowers, it actually helps improve and increase the habitat.
So after our seed comes out of the field, we dry the seed out, and then pretty much all throughout the year, we're continuously cleaning seed. So this is one of our main cleaning facilities. You're going to notice it's a lot of old equipment, but basically we need the old type of equipment to facilitate the cleaning of the types of seed that we have. Most of the seeds that we have are fluffy and have awns and appendages and are difficult to deal with. All the seed that we have has to be cleaned and conditioned and tested every 9 to 10 months, depending on federal and state law, to ensure that we're giving people what they're ordering. And about 95% of the seed that we sell goes out into a mix. So everything comes in to be processed, cleaned, put in the warehouse, and then as we get the design mixes for wildlife habitat or whatever that use is, then we blend it together and send our mixes out. So what we have in this building is a lot of the same types of cleaners. They do the same things. They clean by height, and they clean by shape, and they clean by texture and weight and that sort of thing. But these are much smaller machines, because some things we raise thousands and thousands of pounds of, and some things, for instance, like cardinal flower, we may only have 6 pounds for the entire year. And it's almost microscopic at 10 million seeds per pound. So when we clean it, we want to make sure that we don't lose any of it. So therefore we have a really clean concrete floor. We scour it before we clean the process. If any mishaps happen, we pick it up and we redo it. All right, so this is our main shop. We have a lot of different types of harvesting equipment. We actually have 17 different types of machines, like our converted rice harvesters from China that we had to bring in. We put Cummins motors in them. We put John Deere components in the back end of them. And then we progress on to larger pieces of equipment like our large case rotary combines, where we have 20-foot heads. One other thing I might mention here in the shop, it's the springtime, so we're going through all of our drills. We primarily use Truax native seed drills. There's a lot of other types, but the Truax have held up really well for us, and those are the same types of drills that the Department of Fish and Wildlife has for landowners to use through some of their EQIP programs and other things to help facilitate planting of native grasses, wildflowers for habitat and that sort of thing.
Another thing that's been very popular the last few years, especially here at Roundstone, is creating pollinator habitat. Nationwide, pollinators have been declining. Behind me here, you'll see some honeybees that we have here, but a lot of native pollinators are also declining. And the native grasses and wildflowers actually provide a lot of habitat for those species. And what we're trying to do now is we're trying to increase the amount of wildflower production that we have to make sure that we benefit those pollinators the most. Besides just increasing it, we're also helping landowners learn how to better manage their current native grasses and wildflower stands to help improve them for things like honeybees, butterflies, and the hummingbirds that we consider pollinators.
At Roundstone, we're actually pretty broad in what we do, but at the end of the day, all the native grasses, wildflowers, and wetland plants that we raise are for conservation. And if you have any conservation needs, whether you want pollinators on your properties or you want wildlife or just change it aesthetically for the better, whether you need seed or whether you need advice, and maybe even you just need to know about some of the programs that are out there through different departments of Fish and Wildlife or different agencies, we would be happy to help.